The Virgin Suicides. Oh man, what a fun movie for us to sit here and talk about. I'm going through all of Sofia Coppola again. She's great. I've always liked her. I think she's really interesting. And the film she has made is very fascinating in contrast to her father. But that's not a topic we need to get into. This is her first feature. She'd made a couple of shorts before this. But it's a young woman, making a movie in the 90s that is kind of just like a soft, coming of age in the worst ways kind of a movie. This is a very interesting watch, especially when you go into it not knowing anything. I knew enough. This was one that I remember seeing a while back, and I was like, yeah, might not be in the right headspace for this. So I kind of zoned out of certain moments of it, but I was really into the rewatch this time. And I just walked away going, this is a lot to deal with, and it's going in directions that are very fascinating. It's talking about things that are very fascinating, and you're kind of amazed by a female director spinning a story in this capacity. It doesn't have like, well, in my opinion, maybe I could be completely off base here. This movie doesn't have like a huge like obsession with the idea of the male gaze, but it is like a male gazy movie where this film is just men, boys, I should say, watching these girls and becoming obsessed with them because they are kind of this mysterious figure that they can never ultimately know. But the movie spends time letting our men deal with that. Like that is what this is about. And as like your first like directorial debut, that's a very fascinating thing to explore. There is stuff in there that is really compelling and stuff in here that is very hard to watch. It's a fantastic movie. A perfect movie, a tight movie with every single actor just like ramping it up into some beautiful spectacular things. It's amazing. It's incredible, and it's very interesting just to explore and think about. Small town. It is one of those like small town suburbia movies. It is one of those films too where you're like, this is why I personally don't want to live in a small town where everyone knows all your shit, wants to talk to you about everything, is just like willing to walk down the street and watch your house as something happens. That's like my nightmare. I hate all of that. It sounds terrible, but it's a story 25 years ago because there's narration from a couple of like the older boys from the neighborhood who are telling us about like the suicides of these five girls, and they are all sisters, and they have two very kind of, well, not even two very strict parents, one strict parent and a father who's very lenient to these types of things, and he's just like, gotta do what the wife wants. And it's very fascinating. So you see this family move into this neighborhood, and there's these five daughters. They're from 13 to 17: Cecilia, Lux, Bonnie, Mary, and Therese. And all of them are kind of shut in. They go to school, they just do fine in school, nothing really spectacular about them, but they're all these beautiful, intelligent women, and all the boys in this neighborhood are like, something's going on here. I want to know what's going on here. And I think like when you explore that in a small town, you kind of understand that feeling. These people that are kind of like unknowing to you have this very strict upbringing. I knew people like this in my small town. I am very familiar with this kind of idea. And it's something that it's not uncommon, but it's also kind of scary. We've kind of talked about this too on the channel when we did Splendor in the Grass, like the Warren Beatty film that came out a while back. Is the same type of idea where it's like the repression of thought and feeling leads to your own decline, leads to your own untimely demise. This is a more extreme version of that, where from the beginning we know that these girls, they don't know any better, but when they start to know better, they see like, oh, there is like a shackle that is holding us back from fully becoming something individualistic as opposed to what our mother wants. And that right there, I do want to talk about that. There is something very scary about like the very controlling parent, and it's a theme that countless directors and countless filmmakers have talked about forever. The helicopter parenting, the controlling parent that doesn't let you have any fun. You have to let your kids do stuff. Like that is just, you have to do that. You might not like it, you might not love it, but you have to let your kid learn for themselves, grow in a world, experience these things. And when you just shelter them, it takes these bad approaches. So the first suicide of these young girls is Cecilia, who is the youngest one. And that, you're just like, oh, that's weird. And you kind of start reeling off, like, it opens up and she tries to kill herself, but she doesn't. They send her to a shrink, and the shrink is just like, she should, like, meet kids her own age. So her parents try to throw her a party, and all these boys want to come over and be like, look at this, like, the Lisbon household and how different they are. And then that's when she jumps off of the roof because she's not having fun at this party, and she lands on their fence and she impales herself, and she's the first one to go. And you're like, oh my goodness, that is crazy. You're not expecting it. It comes out of nowhere. And then the youngest male that we follow is kind of haunted by the vision of Cecilia throughout most of the movie. I think solely because, like, it's the same age bracket for him. It's a very just, the whole neighborhood knows something's up. You can't walk down the street without somebody aware of what happened to you in your situation. And that's terrifying. The same note too, Coppola is just, like, so invested in, like, this dreamlike elegance of the world where everything is just like this beautiful bright tones, and there's whites and there's yellows, and everything looks like angelic and just vibrant, and it's just so, like, soft colors, but they just spark such visions. And just like you walking down, you see, like, the ghost of this girl, you see, like, some of these other sisters, like, experiencing life in this different way, kind of opening up and doing things. It's very beautiful, and it's just kind of like that classic old school feel of, like, a suburban town that you can't imagine wanting to be stuck there. The death of their youngest sister doesn't impact them in huge ways that we see happening. They're more focused on the other things, because this is a movie about sexual exploration and that kind of vibe. And I mean, you have to do it. You have to talk about it. It does it in a very mature way. I appreciate how it handles that kind of stuff. But this movie kind of takes, like, a spin in the direction where it's like, okay, this is what the movie's actually about, and this is, like, the downfall of these women when their life falls apart. Because about, I don't know, 40 minutes into the film, maybe a little later, we have the whole stuff of Cecilia and these boys trying to understand, like, these sisters. There's one boy who kind of, like, broke through the mold, and he got to know one of the sisters, Lux, very well. Then we just stop for a minute. We play Magic Man, and in walks a 21-year-old Josh Hartnett, and suddenly we're switching things up into a beautiful romantic gear that, oh my God, like, I love Josh Hartnett. I would argue he's one of my favorite actors working today who should do more and deserves more. And this is an early Hartnett. I always forget about him in this movie. And when he shows up, he's just hot. And you personally, if you've been to a high school, you know this kid. You know that one kid that doesn't give a shit, who looks very specific, and everyone's like, you can't hate him, you don't really respect him, but he's just perfectly in that zone. It's Heath Ledger in 10 Things I Hate About You. It's that vibe where you're just like, this guy's coming in, smoking hot, smoking marijuana, man. He just comes in, all the girls are passing him notes and cheats, and he's hooking up with everybody, but there's, like, one girl that doesn't give him any attention, and he starts to like her, and that's Lux, played by Kirsten Dunst, who will become a staple of Sofia Coppola's career. I love Kirsten. Like, she is a fantastic, phenomenal actress, and especially in these earlier roles of hers, you get to notice just how strong and capable she is of holding her own in any capacity. My God, is she fantastic. And her and Hartnett just play off each other so well. The slow chemistry building up, like these young teens who don't know that they actually really like each other. And they start building up this connection, eventually leading him to asking her to prom and that kind of stuff. Oh, it's so good. The beautiful buildup of him realizing he has to spend time with the family. The family's very strict. It's the mother in particular. He goes to the father, be like, can I bring your daughter to homecoming? Certain rules are built up and all the girls come. And then he's like, I got to get some boys together to get the girls to come out. Slowly building up to them just being free and exploring each other in an amazing way. So much about that I love. And that's okay. I could spend hours talking about, like, the Hartnett and Dunst stuff in this movie, but we have to move past that. Things I love about this chunk of the movie: when we pick up the girls, the guys are nervous because they know something serious is happening. When they take the girls, they are starting to act kind of snooty, like making fun of the neighborhood, kind of like they're above it all when they're getting in the car headed to the place. That is just so good. Where, like, you have this idea of these girls who are so like repressed and connected to like this one entity that they don't really behave any other way than like the way that their snooty parents talk about people. It's very, very interesting, and it's such a honest portrayal of what that's trying to say. I appreciate it so much. I really like it. It's so sad and peculiar, but I do kind of like the older Trip Fontaine, Josh Hartnett's character, because they're interviewing him in the future, and he's like, "You're never gonna meet a girl like that," and you can tell that he realizes he is somewhat responsible for the downfall of that family, where he is in like the football field of Kirsten, and they're together and they're in love and they're having a beautiful time, and they kind of just lead to some more sexual encounters. And then while she's falling asleep, he leaves her because like, I don't know why in that moment I just felt I needed to leave. And then he leaves. And then she doesn't have a way to get home, so she gets the taxi home, and that's when the locks come on and the girls don't even go to school anymore because their mother keeps them locked up. And we do have to talk about this. It's not something I want to spend too much time on. I just want to bring it up. James Woods, he's really good in this movie. He is portraying a very specific character, a guy who is confident in himself at the beginning, slowly realizes like his actions aren't as important as what his wife is telling him until he's ultimately broken in the end and he can't do anything. That's really impressive. Kathleen Turner, terrifying. I've seen that parent before. It's very scary. It's very real. You don't like to see it. And you see that type of chemistry in the father, the mother, and them as parents. You understand what these girls are feeling. So then the back half of this movie becomes these boys trying to get like mixed signals from the girls. Like, can you get us out of here? Can you help us? Like, we're still alive. We're still here. Which again, that's the male gaze thing where it's such like a common thing, and it's so easy to write about and talk about. Just like a boy, a young boy in his teens, just seeing this one woman, and suddenly that's like all he can think about. That's all he can picture. That's not an uncommon trope. It happens all the time, but it's honest, and I genuinely think if you were, maybe it's because I am a young guy and I can see myself being, 14 to 17 in that bracket. And there's like this mystery of these girls, like these sisters, and they're around the corner and they are trying to get your attention, to get them out of this place where they feel trapped. And you want to do something about that because you're young. It's very interesting. And then it goes into a very dark place, which is, it's just that thing where they can't escape. They feel trapped. They feel stuck. They're not allowed to express themselves. They can't wear certain dresses. They have to behave and feel a certain way. That the guys find a way to get into the house, and they find Lux is sitting on a chair. She's like, hey, we'll get the van. We'll bring the car around and it'll all be good. So you got like four boys getting into this house trying to get them out. Trip's out of the picture now. Hartnett shows up for like the middle 30 minutes and then he goes away. But these boys walk inside the house, and the youngest, who is kind of like really into Cecilia, he's the one that notices the woman or the sister hanging from the ceiling. And then we realize later on that the other two were found overdosed in the kitchen, and that Lux was the last to go, and she was in the car, and they all kind of killed themselves. And then it's kind of a wrap up of like these boys growing up the next summer, the next few years, just trying to figure out what happened. And I don't know if you necessarily need that wrap up, but it's a very interesting thing to explore. Where like there's a party by like the rich people in the neighborhood, they're all wearing like gas masks, and these kids are like, how are we supposed to feel or think? This is a very strange sensation that's coming over us. And you do start to just like think about those people in your lives that impacted you, that had feeling for you. It's a very interesting way to explore that. For like a first outing from a director on a big scale, Sofia nailed it. Like, she had a perfect script. She had a great young cast. It's so weird to say, but Sofia is really good at a young cast. She knows how to use them to her benefit. It's always great to see that. And it's just an intense, personal, intimate, scary, realistic, but frighteningly fictional story that works on every conceivable level. You understand these parents, you know what these kids are feeling, you know what these boys are feeling. This is great, This is like a perfect, like, suburbia is scary, let your kids experience shit movie, which is something you should do. It's dramatic tales, baby. It's the virgin suicides. It's weird, but it's great. And maybe if I'm going through all the Sophias, maybe I'll come back and talk about another one. I'm sure we could find one to explore. But until then, thank you all for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.